Hello, team. It's time for the Daily Detangler. All right, it's time for Detangler in the evening again. I start these things in the morning, but it's consistent that I don't get them done till the evening. I don't know. I don't know. I need to get ahead so I can get back to my schedule. But I'm keeping my streak alive of daily detanglers, and I'm going to make this one shorter. So I appreciate you listening. So let's talk about orchestrating emergence. Why am I talking about orchestrating emergence? Well, serendipity, white space, chaos imperative, the book, those two concepts come from there. Also, the idea of creating something from nothing and having it emerge. How do we engineer that? Or how do we control it? Or how do we make it happen? Can we control it? Can we engineer it? Can we make it happen? These are weighing on my mind today as I am trying to figure out how to build stuff that is valuable and create value from nothing with the team. So what is emergence and how does it work? And it's brought to you today by the Catalyst Conundrum. Why do you need a compass to navigate VUCA? Why does conundrum constantly spelled wrong? Just kidding. I couldn't resist. I just see conundrum now. I don't even see the misspelling. But in that episode 3 of the conundrum, the discussion was around, look, VUCA is tough and you can't control it. You can only lean into it. And you need a compass for that. You need some anchor points. What anchor points exist? And one of those anchor points is a scientific method, seeing and solving. So how do we do and how do we build? And then how do we do seeing and how do we do solving, right? And for me, how do I help see? How do I illuminate what I'm seeing? How do I put out what I'm seeing? How do I make observations? And can I get others to relate to those? And at the same time, how do I delay the gratification of instant solving and premature solutioning? Right? And so how do I do that? And one of the things that I've been staying zen about is resisting the urge to just try to solution or jump to the answer. And I've become a lot more comfortable not having the answer by doing the detanglers. So what is that? And then what do I do? What do I do when I recognize that I have to somehow put out something or contribute where I want to, and I have a desire to add value? How do I do that? So one of the things that's in that conundrum is the scientific methods and also the principles, obviously, and there's a lot in there, but I really today found myself gravitating towards this slide and asking myself, what's the convergence of all these things? And if you see in the middle of this slide, right in the middle, it says what? It says orchestration. What is orchestration to bring all these together? If we're understanding message and communicating and resources, and we're taking action to help people buy and gain consensus and share knowledge, how is that happening? What am I doing to help orchestrate this convergence? And I said, well, is it a convergence or is it an emergence? Is this where everything comes together and converges, or is it something that comes together and emerges? Those are completely different. A convergence is like you put it in a vise and you smush it all together, and under high pressure something gets created. Or converging light, you focus it into a light beam. Emergence is creating some sort of condition for something else to happen, which seems like a lot more of what we're trying to do. So how do I lean into emergent? And how do I lean into embracing the principles and the scientific methods and stay grounded to those to just see how things emerge? And it, goes to the orb. And I stripped down the orb, but just to kind of get into it, is the emergent idea of what this orb represents. The orb without nodes is emergence. It's a way to bring things together, but also it creates a lot of space for things to be created. So if I don't have the nodes and I don't think about the nodes, what is filling this space? And am I comfortable in that ambiguity of not filling that space with my own solution or my own idea? Can I walk in and maybe look and observe and document what I'm seeing? From a orchestration orb perspective, am I comfortable with the emergent nature of what the orb represents? Or am I trying to control the orb and impose the orb in my thinking and go, quote unquote, use the orb? And I was thinking about that today because I was using this as a tool to help me build detanglers this week and trying to, bring together these dots. And I'm also through Orchestrate Sales and trying to talk through what orchestration is and what it means to orchestrate. How do I define the difference between this and, project management? And project management's about getting stuff done. What does it mean on the innovate side? What does it mean to lean into the orb and allow the orb to help me innovate? What would that look like? And I found I wrote down some of the things like, what am I kind of tangled up about? I have some definitional things, what is meant by people in this case? What's meant by process, information, and technology? Are we saying if those four things exist, we have orchestration? These four things always exist. What's happening between them is what matters. So what am I orchestrating? What if I think I already am doing that? Orchestrate sounds cool, but is that just a title change? Or am I orchestrating all the time and don't know it? What does it mean? And am I comfortable in that? And what would I allow to emerge? And that brings up my own kind of reflexes and how I'm kind of wired to say, well, let me fight it and impose what I think. Let me get paralyzed and overthink it, or just not worry about it. And, I'm out. That's something I'm not going to wrestle with. So instead of think about how to operate on the operate side of the orb, and how do I operate the orb and try to figure it out like a Rubik's Cube, how would I innovate with the orb? And innovate is different than operate. In the detanglers this week, it's been a running theme. So how would I innovate with the orb? And the thing that popped to my mind was in our scientific methods site, complex adaptive systems. The complex adaptive systems have this behavior called emergence, where emergence comes because the piece parts are coming together. By following simple rules and by following simple principles, emergent ideas come and you don't know where they're coming from. So emergence is the act or instance of emerging. It's newly formed. In other words, it's the idea of creating something from nothing. And I would like to do that more, create something from nothing, so that I can be more helpful, and also that the innovation that creates can fill gaps. So what is emergence? And I thought I would show a 3-minute video on that. So let's take a look.
These ants are working in tandem to form a bridge. Even though there's no leader giving orders, they all seem to know what to do. Similarly, thousands of starlings fly in unison, creating complex formations in the sky. Magnetic properties arise from the alignment of billions of electrons. Intricate frost patterns crystallize on window panes. Hurricanes form above churning oceans, and once clear highways suddenly get jammed with traffic. These different systems all share something in common. Some sort of macro property or behavior arises spontaneously from many interacting micro parts. It's a classic case of the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. The behavior of each of those parts doesn't predict how they behave collectively. Some of our greatest unsolved mysteries, like how life first began and how our brains give rise to consciousness, could be explained by this phenomenon known as emergence. How does complexity emerge from a simple starting point, and how do we even study that? Let's look at the formation of a crystal lattice. Think of molecules in a container. At high temperatures, they'll bounce around independently in a fluid or gaseous state. Poke them, and nothing happens to the system. But lower the temperature, and they form a solid. They crystallize, arranging themselves in a regular lattice. A balancing act between opposing forces maintains the distance between molecules. Now poke them. They'll try to restore the balance. The key is, the forces acting on the molecules don't change. The drop in temperature added a new condition to the system. The same rules created a different effect. And that's how the properties of the crystal lattice, like its rigidity, its elasticity, and its long-range order, emerge. An abrupt change in the behavior of a physical system is something we typically think of as a phase transition. In fact, that's how scientists often think about emergence in more complex systems. Let's return to the bridge-building ants. Like the molecules in the lattice, the ants as individuals obey the same behavioral rules no matter what they're doing. They aren't trying to build structures, but when the ground drops away in front of the swarm, old rules about how close to stay to their neighbors leads to the emergence of large-scale, coordinated behavior. Without that information about their neighbors, the bridge would break apart, just like how higher temperatures cause molecules to break from a solid lattice into a liquid state. Emergence means that we can find hierarchies of new laws and structures that arise out of complexity at different scales. Scientists are seeking to apply the framework of emergence to other areas of research, like how individual cells follow cues to move or transform when organs are developing, or how groups of neurons fire together to help you make decisions. Some researchers are even hoping to engineer such systems of their own, to build robotic systems made up of small, dumb parts that end up swarming together to perform useful tasks. Perhaps this work can help us understand even deeper questions about the emergent nature of intelligence, consciousness, and life itself.
Yeah, so how do we get the dumb parts of sales and marketing to swarm
These
together?
ants
And how do we get people to converge? And one of the things that I thought about was, what is the environment that they're in? And there's so many people in the emergency room in sales and marketing. Triage, triage, go, 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 highly stressful, move, 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 move. And, how do we invite them into a phase transition, a stage transition, this idea of a phase transition to create a different environment where the molecules can work together differently and the dumb parts of sales and marketing can be more cohesive or change, right? And what if we created kind of the emergence room instead of the emergency room? And what would that look like? And instead of an environment of go, 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 doing random, how would we create an emergence room that creates shared understanding, that creates learning from others and thinking through situations and fostering collaboration in order to tackle root cause problems in a thoughtful, structured way, just like what we're trying to do. We're trying to create our own emergence rooms, our safe spaces and the clarity area to be clear. What's the way in which we can invite others into that so they can go through the phase transition? And how do we use principles and scientific methods to say, related to each other? And I thought, today in particular, how do I help orchestrate that? What am I orchestrating? Am I orchestrating an emergence room? Am I creating the space for emergence to happen? Or am I showing up in my emergency room attire trying to triage problems? And when I put it in that lens and I say, well, if I'm going to be an orchestrator, how would I orchestrate the emergence room environment? I can use Zoom and I can use the orchestration orb, that's an easy thing, but what's the outcome? What's the result of an emergence room? And then how do I orchestrate that? And, one of the key things that I think we're trying to drive to and that I'm trying to figure out how to lean into more is the emergence room. How does it actually create action? Because the emergence area, the innovation space kind of creates thinking for me. How do I transition to be in that space and then turn it into action? Learning by doing, prototypes that we can use, or messages that I can try, or ideas I can visualize with C slides, or examples I can share. How do I do that? By observing and embracing the emergence room as an idea. And I don't know if you like the emergence room. I'm just saying as a concept that I like the idea of, and I think Catalyst had said that Architect had this idea of a clean room and all that. And I'm just adding on to that to say, how do we orchestrate that is something that means something different to me when I I get on the court to try to make that type of environment happen, not just go through the doors, but how would I orchestrate that that kind of clean room. And when I was playing with that, what kind of people? Well, it's people who are working on maybe something like creating shared understanding and sharing observations and experiences and empathizing with situations, and who can actually model collaboration. Isn't that required in the clean room, in the emergence room? And then, from process perspective, how the processes support creating something from nothing, that sharing perspective and having each other's back and chiming in with our points of view and leaning into, producing something together, and even maybe even helping each other out by reminding each other or asking or being curious, or maybe making sure that we can actually retrieve information and log into things like SharePoint sites or emails, or getting, finding the stuff. I don't know. And yeah, maybe that's information, but there's a process piece too, right? And I was just kind of noodling, like, what is the emergence room? How do I set it up? What's my ritual, so to speak? And how do I enter into that? How do I stay in the emergence room? When do I not go in there? How do I refine my thinking? How do I test my messaging? How do I show a rock or a stone for stone soup? And what would that look like? And so that idea of moving from, hey, orchestration's an idea, orchestration's a concept, to how do I embrace orchestration as something that I can action and do? And how do I use orchestrating as a concept to help me innovate? And then what type of environment am I helping create and contribute to in that space? And what is that space? And I'm just calling it the emergence room, to allow emergent ideas, emergent thoughts, and something from nothing. And that's how I'm connecting the dots today, with the idea that, if I'm going to create outputs, maybe it's less about micromanaging my output activity, and more about going into the space of the gap in the orb, and trying to understand how that relates to trusting the process, and how my perspective matters, and leading with me matters. And it's the little things, the little toast, the little back and forth, the little addition that makes the orb work together, and leaning into that. So that's been today's Daily Detangler. I look forward to your feedback, and talk to you later. Have a good weekend. Take care.